Hello, I'm Greg with Primal Rights. I am extremely blessed to be able to sit in front of you and say that I live the life that I had always dreamed about when I was younger. There was always this vision of the future, of what my life could look like and what I wanted it to look like. I literally can wake up, do pretty much whatever I want every single day, and obviously my wants and desires are quite narrow, and I realize that the life that I lead and the things that I want to do are so narrow in scope and focus that it would bore many of you into a coma if you lived my life and walked a day in my shoes. There's possibly others, though, that look on my content with awe and wonder at how amazing it is that I can do this. And it goes without saying that it is my firm and solid belief, and I have a mountain of scriptural support in the Bible that says that if you're feeling like that, well, you can live that life that you want as well. But to be able to sit in front of you here today and say that I'm living that life is an extreme blessing. It bears on this video because despite the fact that I can and do spend more time and effort and resources on this than anyone I know or have met, there are still things to discover. I probably will continue working on this every day for the rest of my life, and I'll probably not ever be bored. There is always something that shows up that I either haven't seen before or had maybe kind of seen before, but not ever had the opportunity to have it validated. I can demonstrate that through the intensity and the frequency of the videos that I produce on various topics that most people would just glaze right over. They wouldn't even think to stop to look into. And despite that vast body of work, something has happened again that has allowed me to experience some new stuff, to learn some new things. And it's in the spirit of that I come and share this with you today. Now, some of you may be familiar with my 22 PRC Primal. We have here two nearly identical 22 PRC Primals. For those of you that are unfamiliar with that cartridge, it is a 6.5 PRC improved in 22 caliber, and it's capable of pushing an 80 grain burger VLD in excess of 3,750 foot per second pretty easily, and obviously depending on barrel length and loads and whatnot. Now, the cartridge has historically been very forgiving. The 22 PRC Primal will shoot pretty much anything and do so very well. The 6.5 PRC parent case is obviously extremely forgiving as well, and a lot of you are familiar with it and probably own one yourself and get along with it really well. So if you're interested in that cartridge, you can give me a call sometime and I'll talk you through what we've got available. But the cartridge itself is not the topic of this video. Instead, I'm talking about barrel behavior here. Now, some of you may have had a bad barrel before. A custom rifle that won't shoot at least 3/4 MOA is extremely poor. And the high-end custom rifle market, which is, of course, where we operate, and if you're going to get a rifle system from us, we expect significantly better performance than that. And obviously, this is all dependent on bullet selection and what a guy wants to do with it and what level of performance and velocity he's willing to live with. And there's a ton of dynamics here. The point is, a high-end custom rifle like those that you're accustomed to seeing on this channel will consistently shoot in the 2s, 3s, and 4s. You don't even have to do any load development to get them to shoot sub-half MOA or third MOA. They will do that most of the time straight out of the gate with no load development, no barrel break-in procedures being done. I mean, just right cold, they'll start cranking out little tiny groups. So that's what we have come to expect. And when I get a rifle here, and obviously those of you that are familiar with the channel, you know that Taylor at Stratton Custom Rifles is who does the chamber work, does the bedding, then that all gets sent off. When he's done with that part of the build, tunes the action, times the action, makes everything just perfect from a mechanical standpoint. Then that gets sent off to Daniel at Primal Finish, and he does a world-class masterpiece art level Cerakote job on the thing. Then it comes to me, and then I marry it together with the tangent theta optics and bipods, tripods, and rings and ammunition and load development and whatever else. I'm kind of the systems integrator of our little trifecta of companies here, if you will. By the time it reaches me, obviously, I'm dealing with a somewhat finished product. Well, then I'm tasked with then making it do what it can do, right? Showing the apex of what its capabilities are. I have a tremendous amount of fun doing that. I really enjoy it. It leans into my unique skill sets. Obviously, I have been instructing you guys on how to shoot small for a very long time. I obviously can shoot smaller than most. And so when it comes to driving these rifles, doing the work on the load development, gear that I have here in terms of the reloading equipment is the state of the art. There's not anything currently better out there to do these jobs that I'm doing. And so a rifle can really shine here at this facility. We have the capability to make it do its most. Whatever it's capable of, I can generally wring that out. Now, over time, there has always been one piece of this equation that is mostly outside of the control of just about everyone that is downstream of them, and that is barrel manufacturers. Folks, when we get a barrel blank to start with, that thing is what it is. Unlike a lot of other products out there, you can't tell whether or not it's right by looking at it. You can't tell whether it's right by measuring it. You can't tell whether it's right by doing almost anything. The only time you figure out whether this barrel is going to do its job is when you start shooting it. When you're dealing with a brand new rifle system, brand new scope, brand new rings, brand new stock, brand new bottom metal, brand new, right? All brand new stuff that no one on planet Earth has ever put together in a package and tried to shoot before. How do you know whether it's the stock or the trigger or the action or any of these components? I think many of you would be absolutely blown away at how much faulty gear I see from even big trusted names in the industry, components that have problems. And I know that Taylor runs into the same thing when he's doing that process, when he's going through the build. Doesn't matter what we're talking about, these components all have issues out of the box. When you're trying to provide systems at the level that we are providing, small, minor imperfections, we cannot allow them to exist. We can't allow them to pass through the process. So any of them that we can find, any of them that we can catch, we catch and then try to address, either replace the component or repair the component. Barrels, on the other hand, are something where in order to take a meaningful measurement of them, you would need some of the most state-of-the-art metrology equipment that planet Earth has to offer. Like, I'm going to go on record here as saying that in order to measure a barrel in a meaningful capacity in terms of its bore diameter and the land groove configuration and the uniformity of that along the length of the barrel is probably going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000. Probably more than that, actually. And then you reach a point where no piece of equipment actually exists that can measure it to a degree that would give you any more certainty on the result that it would provide downrange. And so it becomes not worthwhile to even pursue measuring it. Instead, and this is the tack that most barrel manufacturers take, they just produce the product and ship it. If it messes up, if it doesn't perform, they replace it. Now, it depends on which barrel manufacturer you're talking about here. Like, some of them will very readily replace a poor shooting barrel. Others are going to be extremely hesitant. They don't want that thing coming back to them, and they certainly don't want to refund your money. Now, I'm not going to spend much time talking in this video about different companies and how they handle that replacement stuff. And realistically, if they can't look at my body of work and understand that I know when a barrel's not shooting right, then I don't want to have dealings with them anyway. And I'll also go on record and say that I have no relationship with any barrel manufacturer. None of them, okay? Fact remains, some of this gear can perform, others cannot. And when it comes to barrels, we almost never know whether it's going to perform until we start shooting it. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that we don't have a perfect barrel manufacturer, that they've all turned out a dud at one point or the next. But suffice it to say, the barrels are what they are by the time we get them chambered up. And obviously, Taylor, I can see videos. You can go to Taylor's Instagram. He's got videos up there of showing like chamber run out and coaxial alignment. I mean, he's got some extremely fancy tooling to make sure that these chambers are getting plugged in perfectly. And then the way that he sets up to do all of this work on the barrels, the way that he takes care of the action timing and tuning and all of that, he is the best at it out there, okay? He does this work with a consistency and a passion that no other maker is able to do, because their business is not set up the way his is. He is a one-man show over there. He builds an extremely small number every year. That extremely small number allows him to focus and spend as much time as is necessary getting that work perfected. So any rifle system that comes from here, I am having my team do all of the work on that stuff, including him. If you get a custom rifle from Taylor directly, if you'd like to commission him to do a build for you based on, parts that I don't like to use, well, then I'd encourage you to do that, because you won't find a better, more passionate, more Christian-oriented smith anywhere in the world to do that work. So I'd encourage you to make that phone call if you are in the market for something. So I had this rifle built, ready to go, and I started shooting it. Brand new stock, brand new barrel, brand new optic, everything. Brand new, like I said. Well, okay, what's going on? It's not shooting. All right, let's get the barrel, let's get some rounds on the barrel, because I've seen that before. Brand new barrel, until they get done speeding up and you get probably 200 or 250 rounds from, they're like little teenagers. Can't trust anything out of them. Shift point of impact without any explanation. The load work can change. They can completely change what bullet they like and what powder they like within those first 200, 250 rounds, sometimes 300, depending on what cartridge we're talking about here and what barrel. Obviously, different barrel manufacturers, they behave differently when it comes to this. So this behavior, when it doesn't start shooting right out of the gate, I never despair over that, because some of my best shooting rifles didn't shoot super, super tight right out of the gate, right? They shot in the threes maybe, but they didn't shoot terrible either. This rifle was shooting terrible. When I say terrible, I mean 3/4 to 1 MOA. And when you're shooting 22 caliber bullets, that looks pretty terrible on the target. When you're accustomed to seeing itty bitty little bug holes down there, you fire 3 rounds and you can barely discern that there's more than 1 or 2. When you're accustomed to that level of performance, having something that doesn't shoot like that is extremely disappointing and frustrating. I kept shooting it. Doesn't like this bullet, so I switched to the next bullet. Now, this is very common, and I want you all to pay very close attention here, because I'm going to be, while I'm explaining to you what's going on here, if you pick up on the nuance of this, I'm going to be telling you how to go about making a barrel that maybe doesn't want to shoot at the onset, making it shoot. Start with the first bullet that I wanted to try. It doesn't work out. I'm like, okay, well, time to switch powders, right? Because I've chosen a bullet that I want to use. And I spent probably 50 rounds with that combination, with the normal powder that I would use in this cartridge, and it didn't work. So, switch to a different propellant. It too didn't work. I switch again, and again, and again, and again. And I'm trying different powders, because getting the burn curve, that pressure curve that the different propellant will create, even though nothing else has changed, not the bullet, not the seating depth, nothing else, getting that timing altered sometimes is all it takes. Because a barrel can shoot very poorly with a certain bullet and powder combination, but if you change one of those two, then all of a sudden it comes alive and it'll start shooting very small. By the time I got about 12 powders in, it dawned on me, like, okay, this thing just doesn't like this bullet. And so I wanted to shoot that bullet, but the barrel didn't want to shoot it. And that's not an uncommon thing, folks. Now, a lot of times you can get away with shooting that bullet if you find a powder that works acceptably, but it'll never just really hammer. It will never just really, really shoot. Probably. Okay. Conversely, if you find a bullet and powder combination the barrel really likes, well, then oftentimes it will really turn into a laser beam over the course of its life. You get on the plus side of that, get some load development done, and it'll start shooting extremely small and stay that way for the life of the barrel. So, time to start swapping bullets. So I swap to a different bullet, run through about 6 different powders that I know work acceptably in the cartridge. This is not my first 22 PRC primal, so I already have experience and I know what powders it likes. Tried another bullet, and another bullet, and another bullet. Folks, by the time I'm said and done with this thing, I had tried over a dozen different bullets with over a dozen different powders. So basically, every bullet and powder that is even acceptable for me, and then a bunch of bullets on top of that. So this is in addition to the dozen that I've already tried, a bunch of bullets that I was willing to play around with if they worked, but that I didn't really want to shoot at all. Like a 45 grain cutting edge or something like that, And folks, it just would shoot none of these bullets right. I would get 3/4 MOA at the very best, and the point of impact would constantly be wandering around point of aim. Like, even if I had something that was grouping acceptably to go out and sling rounds at something, it just would not hang in there. It just wasn't going to work. Now, by the time I'm done with this, folks, I have like 500 rounds on this barrel. Now, also, in addition to the bullets and powder, I had went through 4 different primers, right? There's no primer that would make any difference. I tried some different brass. No different brass made any difference. So, folks, long and short of it is, I threw everything in the kitchen sink at this thing, and I could not get it to perform. Very obviously, this is not the first time that I've had this happen. I've had bad barrels from different manufacturers in the past. I'm almost always able to get them shooting acceptably with something. I can squeeze out 1/2 to 3/4 MOA performance, and that 1/2 to 3/4 MOA is centered on point of aim. So I'm able to get it to perform somewhat acceptably enough to go and burn the thing down in a prairie dog town or something like that, right? So I'm not emotionally invested in whether barrels are good or bad, because I have so many rifles that can shoot 2s or better that it's just not that important to me. I know that I can just put another barrel on there if a barrel doesn't do it. So I press into these things mostly for your guys' benefit. By proxy, of course, because you'd have to interact with me in some way to gain any benefit from this experience and knowledge. This is how I have come to have the knowledge to convey to you guys that I have, is through experiences like this. So it's important that I don't stop as soon as I start having something push back on me. Now, my recommendation to most of you would be, when you've got a barrel pushing back on you like this, bottom line, everything else in the system is good, and you know it is because it's already been vetted before with a different barrel. If it's not showing you that it can shoot well in the first 200-300 rounds, or the first 150 rounds even, folks, just save yourself the drama, rip that barrel off, send it back to the manufacturer, see if they'll give you a replacement, and then just carry on. Like 9 times out of 10, for those of you that are doing your diligence and you truly have the knowledge and skill to determine whether or not the barrel is the problem, 9 times out of 10, you get a new barrel on there and it'll just start lasering right off the bat, just like so many of your other barrels do, okay? So many of you out there are accustomed to shooting 3rd MOA, and you know whether this thing is pushing back on you or not. And for those of you that don't have that experience, my recommendation to you would be to go and find someone that does have that experience to shoot your rifle, and maybe give their hand at trying some load work on it, because improper hand loading techniques can create the perception of a bad barrel when instead it's just you doing it. Or so many people don't have the skill to drive a rifle properly to determine this stuff. And so you can't load for the rifle effectively, or you can't shoot it effectively, or both. And so you're simply not qualified to determine whether or not you have something wrong with your rifle system. So find somebody that does and have them shoot and or load for your rifle to see what kind of results they can produce. If after that trusted person is not able to get anything desirable out of it, well, then you should do the same thing. Get that barrel ripped off there, get it replaced, and you'll know immediately. You put that new barrel on there, and if it doesn't perform either, well, then you've got a problem. Either in the smith that's doing the work, the chamber design, or something wrong with who's doing that stuff, or problem in your action, or optic, or bedding interface, or something like that. But the point is, I see a lot of people spending a tremendous amount of time fighting against improper equipment that is never going to deliver a right result, and you just get yourself spun out and demoralized over it. Goes without saying that by the time I got done doing all of these different combinations, I'm 500 rounds deep in this thing. It's like, hey, this is a bad barrel. I have no question about it. And there's not a single bullet or powder combination or any combination of components in my arsenal that will perform correctly. Or is there? I literally had this barreled action in the barrel vise. I had an action wrench in the action, and I was moments from taking this barrel off. And it hit me like a flash. I have bullets that are bad. I have these bullets that were sitting on the shelf over in the corner. I haven't touched them or used them for anything since I originally got them. And I was basically trying to work with a bullet manufacturer. This bullet manufacturer will remain nameless because my experience with this company was horrendous. I come to find out that they are as morally disaligned with primal rights and myself personally as I could have imagined. Right? As I sit here presently, I want nothing to do with this company or its people. It occurred to me that I had these bullets sitting there. Now, folks, these bullets, it was the opposite situation. They were 22 caliber bullets in the 70 grain weight class. I tested them in every 22 caliber that I owned at the time. Everything from 223 Ackley all the way to 22 PRC Primal, and I'm talking like 5 or 6 22 Creedmoors, 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 22 BRAs and 22 BRs. Folks, I threw every powder combination and every cartridge combination, everything that I had at making these bullets shoot, and they would not shoot consistently any better than about 3/4 MOA. So the same situation that I'm dealing with here that's being caused by the barrel, well, at least I think so, right? Because I never could get anything shooting right, and this is a brand new rifle. So it's probably the barrel, but I didn't have another barrel in the same cartridge that I could just throw on there. So I couldn't replace the barrel immediately and find out. Well, I had these bad bullets sitting there on the shelf that would shoot in literally no rifle, no combination of anything that I had ever tested them in. They were the worst bullets that I have worked with in 22 caliber, probably in my career. It occurred to me, what can I lose? I'm going to try those. I'm going to try the worst bullets that I have ever used in this bad barrel. I set these things up at about 10 or 20 thousandths jump or something like that from the lands. And no load development. I just threw a powder charge behind them that I figured would kind of be okay. And I started hammering groups in the 2s, 3s, right? Back to back. It shot 2 or 3 times better with these bad bullets in the bad barrel than I had ever seen out of this particular barrel up until that point. So it is blowing my mind at this point. Well, I tried a full powder swing and jumped around in seating depth, and I shot. And folks, it just kept shooting tight. It would change point of impact just a little bit based on where I was seating, but the groups were tighty. just to show you that this is not a fluke, I set up and actually changed powders. This is a test that I did just today. Now, these bullets, folks, that this thing shoots with are terrible, okay? They are just terrible. It's a 70 grain bullet, but it has the ballistic coefficient of a 50 grain or 45 grain bullet, right? They advertise it like a 250 BC, 0.250 G1. In actuality, when I actually ran them out to distance, yeah, they're more like a 225 or a 230 or something like that. I mean, the ballistic coefficient is laughably low. It's like launching a brick downrange, okay? So the 22 PRC Primal is what both of these are chambered in, both 8-twist benchmark barrels. This is a 22-inch barrel with a Manners LRH stock, so carbon fiber barrel, carbon fiber stock. This is a 24-inch benchmark barrel with a Macmillan A3A carbon fiber stock. So both lighter weight hunting setups. Obviously, this guy over here is a little bit lighter weight, and I just have this scope on top of here for testing. I actually have other scopes that I use for the lighter weight versions there. But I wanted to make sure everything was equal when I was doing the shooting for this test. Now, this rifle right here is brand new, the Macmillan A3A, literally taking the first shots out of that rifle for the purposes of this video. This barrel over here has in excess of 600 rounds on it right now. And 500 of those rounds were spent trying to get something to shoot in this thing. Let's take a look downrange. Now, this is the very first shots out of that new rifle. And I'm just kind of getting zeroed up here. You know, first shot I fired at a dirt pile. That was the next shot. And then I made a slight adjustment, fired these two, and then fired these two. And obviously, brand new barrel's going to move around a little bit. And I should have not adjusted it between here and there. I should have just left it shooting there, but I didn't want, when I shot this bottom row, to have the shots go down off the page. But anyway, as you can see, that rifle wants to shoot. There's 3 in here. You can't even hardly tell. It looks like 1. That new rifle is wanting to shoot very well. And I did no load development here, just threw H1000 behind an 80 grain burger. Now, this is the other rifle. What you're seeing here is I put that new scope on there and getting zeroed. I've launched one through here and then one through here. And then I got everything kind of adjusted where I wanted it, and I left it right there. Now, this is one type of powder. This is another type of powder. This is another type of powder, and another type of powder, and another type of powder. So there's 5 different powder charges on the page there. Not only different charge weights, but different powder entirely. And you can see here that there is 2 in 1 hole in multiple of these groups. And like, you can't even hardly see that there's been 3 shots fired there. The point of impact shift obviously is a function of using a different powder. And so you can't even really worry about point of impact shift there. But I want to demonstrate that it's grouping very tightly. You're going to have some stuff like this when you change powder and don't do any load development. And so that one squirting out the side there, I wouldn't concern myself with that too much. It's shooting just fine. I mean, anybody would be happy to have a rifle that shot like this for hunting purposes at the very least. And with some load development, this can all be tightened up. It cranked 3 rounds in some tight little clusters on this thing. Bottom line, folks, this bad barrel shoots these bad bullets better than most of you have your finely tuned setups shooting. And so what is the meaning behind this, right? Okay, well, what kind of equipment would I need to have here to find out why this barrel likes these bullets so much? Now, the logical thing that I'm leaning towards here is a diameter problem, because those bullets wouldn't shoot in anything else. All of the other barrels and rifles that I have shoot these other bullets, any of them, into tight little clusters, but they wouldn't shoot these bullets. Then conversely, this barrel won't shoot any of the bullets and powder combinations that I have but it will shoot these bullets with any powder that I throw at it and do so very well. This barrel loves these bullets, and it's the only bullets that it loves. I'm fine, right? Because I'm 500 rounds deep. This is a 22 PRC primal, and there's no way that I'm going to get more than 1,500 rounds through this thing, probably. I'm going to find out because these things are shooting so well. I'm going to go and absolutely demolish some prairie dogs with this thing. Folks, you know how fun it is to take a cartridge like the 22 PRC primal out to the dog town when you don't care about your barrel's health? It's like taking a lightning bolt launcher out to the prairie dog town. Okay? So I'm not broken up about this barrel getting torched in any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to load up. I've got enough of these bullets, or I'm going to load up and absolutely demolish the rest of this barrel using these absolutely crappy bullets, because it's going to create some pretty colorful effects on the close range ones that I can actually hit. Now, I did shoot these bullets out at 300 or 400 or 500 yards, and because the ballistic coefficient is so low, I don't care what the launch velocity is, they're just not effective past about 300 yards. Not really, not in the normal South Dakota conditions with the wind that we have out here. Now, it probably goes without saying at this point, but my new 22 PRC primal here with the Macmillan A3A, different barrel, completely different rifle. Folks, that one is behaving exactly as I'd expected to. Right out of the gate, this thing started shooting pretty small. So with just a few more rounds, I think I have fired 15 rounds through the rifle in total now, or something like that. I fired a few groups back to back, and you can see here what it's doing. Absolutely clustering these things. Folks, in order to have these rounds land inside that dot, those are half-inch dots, and that means that for a 22 caliber bullet to be inside there, that means by definition it has to be shooting quarter MOA, right? Shooting in the twos. And here is two back-to-back groups with 80 grain Burger VLDs shooting in the twos.
Yes! That's awesome!
Very obviously, this barrel from the same manufacturer is not plagued with the problem that the previous barrel was plagued with. Now, to fully finalize the testing, so to speak, on this setup, I will need to replace the barrel on the original rifle because it's a new action, new barrel, new everything. Obviously, the optic that's on there now has previously been tested. The optic mount, the Hawkins rings have been tested. I already know about the suppressor and everything else. So in order to complete this in my mind and say, okay, yes, that indeed was for sure a bad barrel, I have a new barrel that I'm going to install on that same rifle. And when I swap that out and start shooting it again, I will know for certain whether it was just a bad barrel or not. So what does all this rambling even mean? Like, what did I learn here? Well, nothing that I didn't really already know before, and that is a barrel that doesn't shoot well with any of the normal combinations that you're accustomed to using doesn't mean that it won't shoot anything well, because I've had this before. This is probably my third or fourth barrel from Benchmark that was not good. And I mean, granted, we're going off of several hundred barrels worth of experience here with Benchmark specifically. And so the vast majority of them are good, but I've had at least 3 or 4 that were not good. They didn't shoot well or were super picky and finicky, and or both. And then in some instances, you could actually look in there with a bore scope and you could see where the rifling was messed up. That wasn't the case with this one. The rifling, it didn't appear to be messed up, at least not that I saw with the bore scope. But it doesn't change the fact that it still shot terribly, unless I use it with these bullets that also shot terribly and everything that actually is normal. So I'm leaning towards a diameter problem here, right? The bullets are probably not the correct diameter or are providing the wrong configuration of force back on the powder column when it's burning. Bottom line, it's a pressure curve timing problem that's going on here, probably as a result of a very different interference between the bullet and the barrel than the industry is accustomed to. because all of this stuff has to work perfectly in order to deliver a right result, in order to shoot really, really small. The bore diameter has to be perfect. The bullet diameter has to be perfect. All of these variables have to come together in a absolutely perfectly coalesced manner. Well, if the barrel manufacturer does something different than what the industry has kind of come together and decided that we should do here for the metallurgy, the diameters, the behavior of all this stuff, well, if they do something drastically different, it won't work with any of the other ecosystem that we have out here in the industry. Conversely, if a bullet manufacturer does something different, well, it won't work with any of the barrels that are out there that we're accustomed to. This all is dependent on everything being as it's supposed to be. And sometimes, folks, it's just not. It's just not. So here I have two wrongs coming together to make a right. And you don't often find that. That's not something that happens very often, because most of the time, a bad barrel, I'm able to shoot acceptably with other high-quality bullets from reputable manufacturers. This bullet is from a little boutique manufacturer with, I would say, more than questionable moral standards at this point. But I found that this whole thing was just very interesting, because I don't often get bad components to come together to produce as good a result as I see with this particular instance. And so on one hand, it's a fun learning experience. On the other hand, folks, there is no justification for spending 500 rounds trying to make your rifle shoot. If you cannot get this thing to behave itself within a couple hundred rounds or 300 rounds at the very most, you should really start looking at getting the barrel replaced, or having someone bed your action, or having someone bed your stock, or doing something like that to change the dynamic of what you have going on there. Because life is too short, and the money that you're going to burn up in components trying to press into a system that's not otherwise delivering the results that you're after, I think you'll find that you'll waste a lot of time in components chasing that around. And I know many of you can't shoot where you live, so you have to load up ammo and then drive to a range somewhere. Folks, in that situation, financially, it just doesn't check out. All right, just get the barrel replaced. Work with your smith. If they deliver a product, if it's a custom rifle and you get this from a smith, and then they deliver a product, either a pre-fit or otherwise, and it won't shoot, and it just pressing back on you like that and doesn't want to behave itself, you go to them and have them either prove that the thing shoots or have them send a replacement. Conversely, if you can get it shooting acceptably and you're happy, even though it's not the best shooting thing in the world, well, folks, you should use a little bit of discernment here, because having something that's shooting acceptably, right? If I can get a rifle shooting sub half, I can field that thing. I'm not going to be as happy about it as I am when I've got all the rest of my rifle shooting in the twos, but if I can have it shooting sub half MOA, I can field that thing. It's not as fun, but I certainly can, and you can too. So there's a difference here, right? Where is the cutoff and who's responsible? And try to be fair in your discernment. Just because you get a custom rifle from somebody and it won't shoot zeros every single time, well, guess what? Nobody can do that every time. These days, folks, any custom rifle smith worth their salt should be delivering something that shoots in the threes very easily. If they can't do that, find yourself a new smith. And this is also not to say that you shouldn't be studious in your efforts, or just because you're not able to right out of the gate with the bullet that you chose and the powder that you chose have the thing perform, doesn't mean that you couldn't just change to a different bullet or a different powder and it's going to perform. And so you have to have a right expectation here. And a little bit of work is different than wasting 600 or 700 rounds of barrel life on a barrel that might only last 800 rounds or 1,000 rounds or something like that, trying to find a functioning load that will work acceptably. So there's obviously a way for you to weigh all of this and be fair, and that's the only thing that I'd ask of you guys, is be fair with people, and then to understand what you actually know and what you don't know. Weigh your own experience and make an honest judgment of just exactly how capable you are, whether or not you're even qualified to make a judgment on whether your system is working effectively or not. For our scripture reading today, I come to you from 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11. Dear friends, I warn you as temporary residents and foreigners to keep away from worldly desires that wage war against your very souls. Be careful to live properly among your unbelieving neighbors. Then, even if they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see your honorable behavior, and they will give honor to God when He judges the world. In its simplest form, this means that it doesn't matter what anyone says about you. And it's actually extremely important for you to behave rightly, to live rightly, to live in purity as much as you can in spite of what they are saying about you. Because what they say about you is not important. What you do is important. So not being concerned with what other people think about you. Now, this is only going to apply if you're living rightly and aligned with the scriptures. So if you're living in a way that aligns your behavior with what you find in the Bible, meaning that you deal with evil people specifically in the way that the Bible tells us to, avoid them at all costs, live rightly, set a high standard for yourself, adhere to the principles and teachings of Jesus in the rightest way that you can. As long as you're doing those things, then what someone else says about you is irrelevant. Their opinions of you literally do not matter, up to and including you being persecuted to your death. It makes absolutely no difference. And you, as a right and just believer and follower of Jesus Christ, should know better than anyone that these types of people will criticize you, they will persecute you, they will hate you, they will do all of this regardless of what you do. Now, there's proof of this literally everywhere, but some of you may not know how this works, because those people that are criticizing you, let's say that you just decided one day that you were going to listen to them and you were going to stop being the way that you are. You're going to stop pursuing the Bible because they're making fun of you. You're going to stop pursuing Jesus because they don't like it and they think you're weird and they think that they're going to make fun of you and cast you out because you're a follower of Jesus and because of your beliefs and the high standard that you keep. So instead of continuing on with that, you're going to change and you're going to be the way they want you to be. As soon as you do that, you may think that you would find favor with them, but you will not. Because when you change, they will find something else that they don't like about you, and they'll focus on that. And if you were to change the way that they want you to change in that area, then they will yet still find other things. Because it is in their nature to attack you. It's in their nature to attack everyone around them. If they have relationships, these people's relationships are fleeting and hollow and very meaningless. It's all based on extremely worldly things. So while you may be conned by the world and tricked into believing that somehow you could behave in a way that would appease these people, that would get them off your back, I'm here to tell you that that is not so. That is just a lie. Because those people that are attacking you will continue to attack you regardless of what you do. Because if you were to change anything on their say-so, then they would just see that as a sign of weakness. They would be more bold in their attacks, and all that would do is cause you to be attacked even more. So the only way that you can deal with people that are antagonizing you in this way is exactly as the scripture tells us to. So this verse in 1 Peter here talks about how we're supposed to deal with this. We just continue living right lives in the face of and often in spite of what they're saying, because what they're saying doesn't make any difference to God. And when God judges the world, and He is judging the world all the time, those people will be severely punished So you don't have to worry about the punishment or the revenge or the trying to get back at them for something that they've said that is a lie, something that they said that hurt you, something that they're saying to someone else behind your back. It really makes no difference to you and your life, because the important matters in your life has to do with your relationship with Jesus Christ. It has to do with your relationship with His Word. It has to do with how well you're able to listen to the Spirit dwelling within you. Those are the important things that you need to be working on. Your relationships with other people, the only time that that is important is when that other person demonstrates to you that they desire your presence, that they actually want you around. Because it is not your job to go around and try to convince a bunch of people that will never be for you to be an advocate of yours. They're not for you now. Nothing that you say or do will make them for you unless God sees fit to change their heart. So stop living your life in bated anticipation, waiting for these people to come around and try to like you. Because, folks, it will not work. I know this from great experience, having walked on both sides. Once upon a time, being a very callous and harsh and difficult person, to being as complete a follower of Jesus Christ as I can possibly manage. And it doesn't matter the fact that I am not doing the negative things that people didn't like before. Once I start doing more positive things, they don't like that and make fun of that now. So it makes no difference, okay? Those people have hard hearts. They are not just and right people. And when you scrape away the surface, that little personality that they have spent so much time manufacturing, and you scrape away at that just a little bit, underneath you find a angry, hollow, scared individual. They have nothing to anchor them spiritually. So folks, take heart, follow the Scripture, read the Bible every day. When you have problems in the world, go to the Bible, look for your explanations in there, and within its pages, you will find the descriptions of the problems that are currently plaguing your life, as well as the instructions on how to get rid of those problems by gaining a better relationship with Jesus Christ. Thank you all for joining me for this message, and I hope you have a blessed and wonderful week.